Meantime, two men charged and released on home detention for their alleged involvement in the siege of the U.S. Capitol were in court today. Government prosecutors asked a judge to remand Ethan Nordean and Joseph Biggs, sending them back to jail now that a grand jury has returned an indictment against both men. The indictment charges that Nordean and Biggs both obstructed and impeded an official government proceeding, as well as committing violence against law enforcement at the Capitol. The prosecutor said Ethan Nordean played a leadership role and was heavily involved in the organizing of the attack on the U.S. Capitol, raising over $16,000 as part of a plan to stop the certification of the presidential vote. In addition, prosecutors argued there is video evidence showing Nordean and Biggs moving through a group toward law enforcement and damaging a barricade outside the Capitol building, saying this represents the men are a danger and threat to the community. Defense attorneys for Ethan Nordean and Joseph Biggs argued that the video will show that their clients did not attack police, but simply shook a metal barricade until it was knocked down. And therefore, the video was not relevant to the case. Nordean and Biggs' attorneys point to the fact that their clients have been on home detention for more than 2 months, and according to the pretrial reports, they have been compliant. Well, the judge is allowing both sides to file supplements to the detention motion by the end of the day. The next hearing on whether to return the defendants back to jail is scheduled for this Friday. We'll keep you posted.